Welcome to the Industry Show. I'm your host, Nitin Bajaj, and joining me today is the Rajeev Kapur. Rajeev, welcome back.
Thank you, then Nitin Bajaj. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
So, let's start with who is Rajeev?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I'm just an ordinary guy who's gotten lucky in life, and I've had the pleasure and blessing of having a great family, some great friends, and having the opportunity to lead some great and amazing organizations. And that's really who I am. And ultimately, if you were going to ask, I think if you asked me my why, you asked me this the other day. You asked me what my why was, and I'll tell you, my why is to help honor other people's dreams. That's really my why. And the more I focus on that, the more karma points I can build up in my life, the better it is for me.
Humble and modest as always. I really love and appreciate that about you. One thing I think since the last time we spoke, there's been an update to who's Rajeev, and Rajeev is now an author. So tell us a little about Chase Greatness and, why do this and who's your audience and why now?
Wow. Thank you. First of all, I'm glad to be back. And I hope your audience is not too upset with the fact that I'm back now a second time. Hopefully they like it enough and they didn't just click off. So please don't click off. But anyways, like you said, here's the book, by the way. It's exciting. Here it is right there.
Nice.
Chase Greatness, Enlighten Leadership for the Next Generation of Disruption. So that's exciting. It's right here.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's about 240 some odd pages. Pretty good read. It's available by the time your audience sees it. It's on Amazon, and it will be available. There's a special Kindle campaign happening for it, but we'll get to that in just a minute. But well, what is Chase Greatness and why now? I mean, look, here's the thing. Nathan, I've talked about this in the past. I've had the concept for the book in my head for the last few years. Really probably since about 2015, 2016. And when you have a chance to read the book, and hopefully your audience has a chance to read the book, and hopefully people like it. When I was going through the book, there were three things that I noticed were happening in the global world, right? And this was a few years ago. Number one was the complete change in technology with the burgeoning AI, IoT, and IoT, for maybe listeners who are not familiar with it, that's like your Ring doorbell, right? Your Nest thermostat. You can control that over your phone, right? It's electric cars. The beauty of people think electric cars is climate change and all that stuff. Yeah, it's fine. It'll definitely help. But the real thing for Tesla is that it's really a data company. They have millions and millions of drivers out there driving Teslas and other electric type cars, and all that data it's getting in around our habits. And so we think Google and Facebook and all these things is tracking our data. Well, you can imagine what an electric car is tracking, right? So you have the changing world with technology. You had the burgeoning gig economy. You started to see more and more look at Etsy went public. It did really well. Yeah. There are whole businesses now being created. People have taken the Etsy model and now are creating businesses. Everything from creating amazing artwork and amazing audio work or sound and music and movie and short films and little things like that, whatever it might be, not just on Etsy, other platforms, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, you name it, right? There's so many amazing things happening from an overall entertainment, education, way people consume content perspective, right? That's some really good news there. The bad news is that there's a lot of great things happening too, right? So the thing about social media is that everybody has a voice. That's the great news. The bad news is everybody has a voice, right? That's really the bad news. So you have that happening. So you have this burgeoning, all this great new technology coming and AI and all these things, and you have all of a sudden all this creativity happening too way over here. But then over here, you also started to see workers starting to change. And I started seeing it in my company about 3 or 4 years ago. And I noticed about 3 or 4 years ago that about 40% of my company was working from home already. So I'm like, all right, well, we started seeing that. When I joined 1105, we had, I think, close to like 80,000 square feet of office space. Today we have maybe 10, 12. So we were on the early cutting edge of this whole kind of work from home movement. So you had all these three things happening, right? You have this AI thing happening. You have this creativity thing happening, and then you have workers wanting a different type of work lifestyle. Okay. And so I kind of noticed that, and I started taking notes. It's funny. I met with a mentor of mine today for lunch, and he asked me the same question you just did. And I said, Ken, I just started writing all these notes. I started writing notes, and I'd write notes on a pad of paper. I'd write notes on Post-it notes. I would get up in the middle of the night and write notes in my little thing, my little journal. And over time, this guy had this big, thick thing of different ideas I wanted for the book. And so, it wasn't until I worked with a publisher and we got it all figured out and realized. But really, the takeaway is that for the first time in history, you have this burgeoning industrial revolution happening with AI, IoT, and all these different things. You have an enlightenment period starting to come over here with everything happening on the creativity side, right? I mean, think about all the streaming services, all the content being produced, right? Think about how people can now go become TikTok music stars or YouTube video stars, wherever they get all this great content being produced. Think of the gig economy itself, right? Being out here, people having side hustles. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I guarantee you probably 30 to 40% of the people in my company probably have side hustles, and I don't ask, and I don't care as long as the job gets done. But then you have this work from home thing, people working from home. The pandemic happens. You have all this money that was put into the vaccine, into the development and fighting coronavirus, all these different kinds of things. Now, eventually, all that stuff's going to come out. And what's happening is for the first time, those three things are merging together. And for the first time, we're going to see an industrial revolution and an age of enlightenment kind of merge together, and all that with the fact that most people can work from home. To me, that's crazy. To me, that's insane. And that you take that and you look at the demographic of how the world is changing. If you look at how the workforce is changing, not only are they working from home, but Nitin, in the next 3 years, the majority of the workforce is going to be Gen Z, millennial, and women. And Gen Z has its own language, right? I mean, you've seen this. They speak in memes. They speak in emojis. Like I learned the other day the word cop. Let me ask you a question. What does the word cop mean to you?
No clue.
Cop, police, right? You call cop.
Okay, yeah.
Cop, right?
Yes.
Okay, but you know what the word cop means to somebody in Gen Z? It means to acquire something. When you're looking at a post on Instagram and you see a red flag, like the red flag emoji, that means beware, danger, danger, danger. All right, it makes sense. Red flag warning, right? A cap. I think the other day I learned that the cap is a cap, like a good old cap.
Right.
When you see that as an emoji, that means BS. Yeah, and it's like you got this whole new language, right? And so those young kids are going to be the part of the work. They're going to be the majority. They're going to be part of the majority workforce here in the next 36 months, and that's coming. And they require a different type of leadership. And so essentially, Chase Greatness says, in order for businesses to move forward, in order for society to move forward, we all have to chase greatness, right? We all have to understand that a different type of leadership is going to be required for this up and coming generation. And it's up to the Gen X generation, the Gen Y generation, a little bit of the Boomer generation to understand and recognize that. And I know there's a lot of challenges right now in the world, especially if you look at politics and the media and all those kinds of things. But the point I make in the book is that Gen Z and millennial, and of that mostly women, they are disenchanted with political leaders. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, they're just disenchanted with them. And what they're asking for, what they want, is they want their CEOs, they want the presidents of their companies to also have a view outside the walls of the business. And that's what I call enlightened leadership. And so you take the idea of servant leadership and you build it and you expand it, and that's enlightened leadership. So that's hence the title of the book, and that's what the book is essentially about. It's about why that's important, what to do, and how to really deal with that going forward in the future.
Rajeev, that's truly exciting. I know you said you've been working on this for the last 5-6 years. I also want to reflect back and talk about your personal experience in your professional career, where for a good amount of time you've led multi-billion-dollar initiatives across India, China, and here in the US. And you bring a lot of perspective over your career. And then as you've been in the mix of these changes as they have happened, and you've had this amazing opportunity to be in the mix of all of these things, working with large corporations, but also with a lot of startups. If you were to, box it in and tell us everything you know about leadership in 5 words, what would that be?
It's funny. You sent me that question, and I do the answer. I'm trying to figure out how do I say it in 5 words. You know, it's I would tell you this: it's learn how to listen better.
Love that.
Honestly, that's it. Those are my 5 words. I mean, look, I think one of the hard parts for leaders and leadership in general, right, is the many leaders just tend to talk too much and they don't listen enough. And the more you listen, the more you can understand what your team, your customer, your stakeholders are going through, the more you can have gratitude for the situation, the more empathy you can have for the situation, the more accountability you could potentially put in place. But you have to be able to willing to listen. You have to listen. And I think that's something maybe we just don't do enough of. We immediately, as a society, tend to want to judge right away. And we got to just stop, take a deep breath, and just listen.
Do you think, the last 2 years through the pandemic, as more people have gone remote, and you were kind of on the cutting edge of this, you had an earlier lead on this. You think the whole crux of people moving away, has that improved the situation of people listening, or has it worsened it?
No, I think for me personally, and for what I've seen, and for what I've seen from some others, we haven't skipped a beat. And I'm not saying all organizations are the same, but I'll tell you this, that if I hear one more Fortune 500 CEO complain about employees that they can't get employees back in the office, I'm going to scream from the top of the building that CEO should be fired. It's his or her job to figure out how to deal with the cards that they're dealt with, rather than lay down the law of the land. You have to come back in the office. No, you don't. You do not have to come back in the office. I have a very complex business, as you know.
Yes.
Within 1105, there are 5 companies, and I manage 5 companies with 3 different divisional presidents, rolling up to me, right? Not to mention all the other job functions.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to tell people about my job role. All I'm simply telling you is, Nitin, I can run, based on this thing, I can run 80 to 90% of my company with this phone, with this iPhone. The rest of it, board meetings, some PowerPoint I might have to do, things like that. Yeah, I got my laptop. But guess what? I can do it from anywhere in the world. I can be sitting on the beach in the Maldives. I can be in Singapore. I can be in Egypt. I can be in Paris, and I can run my company. Sure, just got to get up the time zone that I'm supposed to get up in. But here's the thing: what people are not understanding, and I hope people take away from this podcast, as well as maybe from the book, is that work is being democratized, right? We have now moved to a format where I don't care when the work gets done, as long as it gets done. Because if it doesn't get done, you're going to lose your job anyways.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to get fired. So here's the thing: we are no longer a 9-to-5 company. I mean, we haven't really been for a long time, right? I like, I'll give an example. My CTO Eric called me yesterday and said, "Hey, one of our managers in our shared services group wants to sell her house and move to Florida. She lives in California, and she's, I think she's single and whatever." I'm like, okay, and she's working remotely already, so who cares if she's working in Florida or if she's working here, and if that's going to make her happy and that's going to give her a better quality of life. Well, I don't care. I mean, she's going to go there, and if she can do the job from there, and she can handle the time zone differences and everything, and fine, so be it. I'm all for it. But if it doesn't work out, fine, we tried. But look, I'll tell you right now, knock on wood, so far it's working, and we have democratized work in our workplace. And as long as the job gets done, whether it gets done at 6 o'clock at night or it gets done at 6 o'clock in the morning, as long as it gets done. And I think people love that. And we are not an organization where we turn the camera, where we make people turn the cameras on their laptops so people can track them and all that nonsense. Oh, it's stupid. If you can't trust your people to get the job done, then either you're a really shitty leader, or you have a really horrible culture, or you just hired the wrong people, or a combination of those three at some level.
Rajiv, I've always loved this about you. You call it as you see it, and your voice matters. So thanks for speaking up to this. I think from what I have seen is this is an opportunity, and some leaders are having a difficult time recognizing it as such, right? Uh, let's kind of go back to this perspective of in the book you talk about identifying and nurturing this new North Star for leadership, right? What what is it?
So here's the thing, you know, for me personally, right? So when the pandemic hit, we lost about 40 to 45% of our business, because 40 to 45% of my business was face-to-face events.
Right.
All right. And, I always knew what my why was. My why was to honor other people's dreams, like we talked about earlier on. But what I needed was the ability to write down and figure out what was going to be my guide going forward. Here it is, literally overnight. I mean, overnight, we had the rug pulled out from underneath us. What's our cash flow going to look like? What's our profitability going to look like? Oh my God, pay cuts, layoffs, all these things, right? I'll be honest with you, man. There was probably a 24-hour window there where, like, you kind of scratch your head going, am I going to have a company tomorrow? Am I really the right guy to lead this charge? Can I deal with this challenge? You have those thoughts. And I knew I'd be fine. And I needed something. I needed to develop my own kind of guiding North Star. And that was really what crystallized the real format of the book. And that was March of last year. And, I call my North Star the Great North Star.
Yeah.
And the reason why I call it the Great North Star is because the word great, hence the title Chase Greatness, the word great for me is an acronym. It's not a word. The word great for me stands for gratitude, resilience, empathy, accountability, and transparency. If I focus on those 5 things, I can tackle any challenge in my life. And that's what I did. And so I kind of came up with that acronym, and we had our 24-hour pity party when the rug got pulled out from underneath us, and we quickly pivoted. And Nitin, we were one of the very first companies to launch virtual events. We launched it within 2 weeks of the country shutting down. Virtual events within 2 weeks. And we had 1,500 people, and we had 1,500 people attend that event. And that was huge. And that really, if nothing else, that gave confidence to the team that we were going to be just fine. Now we had to do some layoffs, we had to do some pay cuts, but guess what? After about 5 months or so of doing that stuff, we restored all the pay cuts. We brought people back, started bringing people back. And we actually ended up having our second best profitability year ever last year. And we actually tripled our company's cash position. So we did really, really well. And this year we're having even a better year this year. And so, things are, knock on wood, are great. And I'm not saying it's because of me. It's all because of the team I have. But, I really empower my team to try to be great. And that's why we are right now as successful as we are. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm really excited about the future, and, not just for me, but for the team and the company in general.
And what I love about this story is that you've been able to bring all of that experience, the international experience, the ability to grow different businesses in different parts of the world, take all of that culture in, and then this shift that came to us 2 years ago, where we didn't know what the tomorrow is going to look like, and now we're at the other end of it, where we have these talent wars and supply chain issues, and where we can't have enough of anything and everything. And what you have presented in this book, based on the conversations we've had, is this new dynamic that leaders need to really understand, think, and then be able to deploy in their own environments. Right? Makes me want to ask you, what's your favorite section of the book?
It's a labor of love, right? So I think I love it all, right? The book is set up to where it's at the end of every chapter, there's little thought exercises that really kind of lead to like a little mini workbook in the book itself. So for example, after chapter 1 or 2, one of the questions is, how would you put yourself out of business? Right? As a CEO of a company, ask yourself, have you asked your team, how would you guys put yourself out of business?
Huh.
How's your culture? Have you asked ask yourself, if people on your team were offered the exact same amount of money, doing the exact same job, would they leave? If the answer is yes, you have a major problem.
Yeah.
It's little questions like that towards and then I have these little stories in the book also where I start writing about different people, and you have to, and I don't tell you who it is in the beginning, but by the end you know who it is. Right? So I'm not going to give away. That's a little story time. And then at the very end of the book, I have something called Kapur rules, and these are just kind of lessons and ideas that I've kind of come away with from great mentors, like, as you know, one of my mentors was Michael Dell and a bunch of other people like that. And I don't mean the name drop, but it's just fact. And so it is what it is. And so, so I have my Kapur rules. And so there's about 30 or so in the book, and I have another 100, and those are great for social media. So hopefully people like those. And then in the book, at the end of the book, I encourage people to send me their own rules. And these not to be Kapur rules, they can be Bajaj rules, right? They can be Smith rules or Davis rules or whatever it might be. And I tell your listeners, send them to me. I'm gonna post them on my social media. You post on your social media, and let's share that out there to people.
Love that. And, with that, we would love to ask you to share one-line life lessons with us. I know you shared a few last time, but, since the book has come out and now you have 100 or so in the book.
Well, I've got about 30 or so in the book, and then I've got about another 100 or so, that are just, that I have like ready to go for the future. Right. So, look, I think, here, I'll give you one that's not particularly a life lesson, but I will leave you, I'll give you the life lesson for in just a minute. But there is something I want the listeners to really understand here. Okay. Look, I know that there are people out there that will not like the message in the book because people don't like change. But I'm here to tell you, I get it. I understand. I'd love to hear your feedback on that. I'm happy to have a dialogue with you about that. But I want to share a little story. So I went to meet with the new dean of the USC Marshall Business School. Okay, Dean Jeff Garrett. This was a couple of weeks ago. And Jeff used to run Wharton. He built Wharton into what it is today. And I took him a book. And, he loved the idea and the concept. He loved the idea of enlightened leadership. And he just looked at me and he smiled. And, after I got done talking, he gave me a big hug. He says, you know what people don't realize? The thing I'm seeing from leaders and CEOs. And this guy built Wharton. So he's talked to all the top CEOs. What these guys don't realize, what these women and men don't realize, it's just happening. It is just going to happen. The changing demographic, the change in technology, the fact that the workplace is going to be more women, it's going to have a lot more LGBT and LGBTQ people, it's going to have more minorities, it's going to be younger. It's just happening. It's just is what's going to happen. So you don't have to do anything, but I guarantee you, if you don't, you will not have a business in 3 to 5 years. So you have to adapt. So life lesson number 1, improvise, overcome, adapt. And that's something those CEOs who are whining and bitching and complaining about employees not coming back to work, those guys and those women need to make sure they understand and learn that lesson. All right? Another lesson is, and I think I mentioned that, this is probably my favorite one, is most people, companies, and teams fail not because they did the wrong thing. They fail because they did the right thing for too long. Yes. And look, I'll use me as an example. When COVID hit, if I didn't pivot to virtual, if we kept saying, no, we're going to do face-to-face events because it's this and this and this, I wouldn't have a business today. So you have to improvise, you have to do that. I think the world is filled with examples of that. Blockbuster Video, Borders bookstores, Nokia. The world is filled with those kinds of examples, right? And those were way pre-pandemic. I think we even talked about the companies that maybe were affected, during the pandemic, right? And how they pivoted, right? You always, pretenders love the idea, right? real good leaders, real effective leaders, not just love the idea, they also have to find a way to execute against the idea, right? They just don't pretend and the idea. You know, exceed your team's expectation of you.
Hmm.
I think that's another important one. There is, I think the big thing I learned back in March was don't let setbacks be setbacks. Right. And then, and I'll leave, the last one I'll leave you with is, fortune favors the brave. And that's a cliche statement, but it's true. You got to be brave. You have to demonstrate courage. And right now, that courage leads to an incredible amount of resilience, hence the R in great, resilience,
Yes.
right? But you can't be resilient unless you're brave, unless you show, and in order to be brave, you have to have courage. So it all links together. And so there was a method to my madness. There was a method to where I got to that word great in the acronym and what it means. And so people ask me, well, T, transparency, how can you put truth? Well, I don't think you can have truth unless you're transparent.
True.
So I think you have to have that transparency first before you can have the truth. And you have to be transparent with your team, your peers, your friends, whatever it might be. You got to be transparent. So anyways, that's it. The book is coming out on Tuesday, but on the November 9th. But I think by the time the audience hears this, it'll be a little after that. So there's a special Kindle campaign, and the Kindle campaign is only 99 cents. And that doesn't mean the value of the book is 99 cents. The hardcover, if you want to buy it, is $26. But it's, this is not a money-making thing for me. This is about really getting the message out. And the Kindle campaign is just an Amazon thing for new authors, because the Amazon algorithm doesn't know who I am. So that's how they do that. And they want people to download the Kindle app. So you don't have to own a Kindle. You can download the Kindle app on your iPhone or your Android phone and then get that way, because they think in the future, those Gen Zs that we were talking about, they're not going to be reading books. They're going to be just, they're just going to be reading on their phones, or maybe even an Audible. And the Audible version of the book will be coming sometime in Q1 of next year. So anyways, but I'm glad to be here again and excited. And for those of you who have a chance to get the book, I hope I didn't disappoint. Hope you like it. If I can ever help anybody, my contact information is in the back of the book.
Rajeev, thank you so much for being here. Congratulations again on the book. Really looking forward to reading it and getting my personal signed copy from you.
Oh yeah, no problem. I got it right here for you.
Awesome. Looking forward to that, Rajeev. Thank you, and looking forward to having you back again.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. I think we'll wait for next season, so you don't get the trifecta. So
somebody's got to be the first, and that's you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Rajeev.
I really appreciate it. Best of luck.